Well, hey, Divi Nation, welcome to a brand new Divi use case live stream where each week we show you how to add new design and functionality to your Divi websites. And today we will be exploring how to design floating modules that look like they're colliding in 3D space. This design will work well as a way to wow visitors by showing that you have an expanse of services, products, or resources on your website. Don't forget to check the video description for more information on this tutorial. And without wasting any time, let's go ahead and jump in and get started. Now, please feel free to jump in on the comments. Make sure that you let us know you're there, and I will be glad to answer any questions that you may have along the way. And you can start with give me a thumbs up that I'm coming in loud and clear to everyone. That would be super helpful. Hello, Samar. I am doing well, thank you. And Agencia, welcome to have, good to have you with us. Alonso, hi from California. All right. All right, everything sounds great. Thanks, Michael, for that. All right, thumbs up. Hi from Argentina. All right, Excel, nice to see you. I've actually been to Argentina before. It is beautiful. All right, so let's see. All right, we're looking good. I'm going to jump in and get started here. Looks like we're all ready to go. Again, don't forget to submit any questions you may have. Hopefully I can get to them and answer them. And if you are looking at the screen here, you can see this is kind of a preview of where we're going with our tutorial today. Excuse me. And these are modules that are, using the Divi's transform options with a little perspective property added to the section there to create the effect of them floating in 3D space with some distance, and then they're colliding into one another. And these are actually working modules. Although this is a design, primarily a design element, these modules are functional, so you can add hover effects to each one, and of course, link to certain items as well if you want to. But this is the design. It's pretty clean, kind of creative, gives you another kind of a 3D effect that you can add to wow your visitors a little bit with, just showing that you have an infinite amount of products or resources, things like that. To get started, really, only thing you need is Divi. We will be, accessing one of our pre-made layout packs, the video game layout pack, just to kind of kickstart the design a bit, so we can focus more on the functionality of this, or for this tutorial and this design. So let's see. I'm gonna get started here by if you're just starting out, you want to create a new page. Make sure you give your page a title, and then deploy the Divi builder on the front end. That's where I will be building this one today. Real simple, but I'm just going to delete this layout so we can start from scratch. So now we have our blank canvas. And by default, you'll have a regular section. And all you're going to do is add, before you add anything, we're going to add a pre-made layout. So to do that, you can actually do it with the pop-up that comes up when you first start a new page. And it'll give you three options. One of those options is build from scratch. So make sure you choose a pre-made layout, not build from scratch. Choose a pre-made layout, and then that'll jumpstart the load from library pop-up. But if you're on a page like this already, all you do is come down here and click the plus symbol, and then you can load it from your library here at any time. So I'm gonna get the video game layout. I'm just gonna search for it here, type in video. We have a whole lot of layout packs, so I find myself using that search bar a bit more, but we're gonna use the landing page. So video game landing page, I'm gonna click that one, and then deploy it to my page. And we're only going to use actually a couple of rows in this entire layout. So I'm going to start by deleting a lot of the things that we don't need. What I'm looking for is these modules. And you can use, of course, any modules, or these are blurb modules, but you can use any module for this design. But since I want to use these to kind of jumpstart my design, I'm going to delete everything else. So I really don't need this row, or this row in this section. And let's see, I don't need anything else. So I'm going to delete everything on this layout except for that section with my 2 rows of blurbs. Delete that section, and finally that section. Oh, wait, one more. Okay, now we got everything deleted, and now we have, a good design to work with to start off. So first thing I'm going to do is create a new row. So I'm just going to hover over my green plus icon there to add a new row. Then I'm going to make it a 1-column row. I'm not going to add anything to it just yet. I'm going to drag it up to the top here. And I'm actually going to populate this row or this column with 5 of these blurb modules. And to do that, I'm going to use the multi-select feature. So I'm just going to hold down Shift and then click on the first one, come over here, click on the last one in the row, or make sure you select them all. You can actually press Control and then click on each one individually if you like. Might be easier. All right, so now that I have 5 selected, I'm just going to Control C or Command C over one of them, and then Control V or Command V to paste them into my new column, or excuse me, new row. And now I should have 5 in there. All right, so that's good. I don't need these next rows, so I'm just going to delete them. So now I have a single row with a single column and 5 of my pre-made blurb modules here. And this kind of sets us up to accomplish the design we're looking for without having to go over all those settings to get it looking good. So here we go. Next step, we're going to add some perspective. So I'm going to do this first because I want you to see the 3-dimensional effect in real time as we're building it. So the way this works is if you add a perspective property on the parent element, in this case the section, once you start rotating these rows or modules with the transform properties in 3-dimensional degrees, or like rotating it along the X or Y axis and things like that, you will see, the user will see those elements will have perspective added to them, which creates the impression that they're up close and far away. And I'll show you what that looks like. So the perspective element or property needs to be added to the section. So I'm opening up my section settings, and this is a really small snippet of CSS, and it's just perspective, and then I'm going to add a value of 1000 pixels, which basically shows the whatever elements have the 3D rotation added to them will appear to the user as if it's 1000 pixels from the viewpoint of the user, or the perspective of the user on the screen. All right, so that's it. Perspective 1000 pixels to the section. Now, next thing, we're going to add, there's 3 things that we need to do to change to our row. And the first one is add display flex, which basically the reason we need to do this is we want to align every one of these modules horizontally. And right now they're vertically. Now, instead of using a column, let's say a 5-column layout, which will break on different mobile devices like tablet and phone, we want to keep it 5 columns throughout all browser sizes. So an easy way to do that is to add display flex to our row. And that will take care of that for us. And then we're going to change the gutter width to 1 to take out that spacing. And then we're going to add a rotation to our row, which is going to create that 3D effect. All right, so first thing we're going to do is add display flex. So I'm going to open my row settings, go to my advanced custom CSS, and we want to make sure and add it to the column main element. So that's the parent element directly above the module. So we want to add it there. So it's simple. Just type in display flex, and that takes care of that. Now you can add another line of CSS which just justifies it center. It's just justify content center, and that way it'll just make sure that the row or all those items in the row, I should say, remain horizontally centered within the actual row. All right, so that's simple enough, and now we're ready to go up and change our row design settings a bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a custom width because we need some more space. This is 5 columns that's going to shrink down on tablet and mobile. And so we want to maximize our space as much as possible. Right now, the width of our row is 80%. We want to increase that on tablet to 100%. All right, so that increases it there. And then we want the same for phone. It looks like it inherited that one, so we're good. Let's go up here and give it a custom gutter width. This takes out any default margins between your elements inside your row. So I'm going to cut that down to 1. And now we're ready to add our transform property. But let's go back to our desktop view here. Now I'm going to scroll down and go to my transform options here, and you'll see this is where once we start rotating this entire row, you'll see, because we have our perspective in place at the section level, that you'll see it that perspective added to the row, and you'll see the 3D effect. So I'm going to add transform rotate, and I'm going to add it to my x-axis here. I'm just going to do 45 degrees, and there you go. You can see how it appears closer on the left side and farther away on the right side as it rotated, and that's because of the perspective. All right. Now, we don't have any spacing between our modules at this point, so we can go ahead and add those on the module level. Since we're using flex with a gutter width of 1, there's really no spacing. They're kind of all smushed together. So if you do want to add additional spacing, I would suggest adding it to the module themselves here. So I'm just going to select all of them at once using multi-select, and I'm going to edit the elements, and I'm going to give it a custom margin to the right. And I'm going to give it a 2 VW. There you go. So a little bit of spacing there, added between the elements by a margin on the right side there. And I don't want the margin on tablet, so I'm going to take it out. Again, we want to maximize space on tablet and phone as much as possible. And with our transform element, we're going to be resizing these modules, so there will be additional spacing added just by resizing the modules and shrinking them. All right, so let's do some custom padding. I'm just going to use a percentage length unit here. Top and bottom 2% for my custom padding, and this is of course adding it to every one of my modules at once. And 3% on the left and right. All right, so there we go. Now I'm going to go back to my content area, and I don't really want my text in the my body text there, so I'm going to erase it, and that'll erase it for all my modules. I'm going to give it a background color, just a kind of a background, semi-transparent background color that matches the layout design here. All right. Looking good. And last thing I'm going to do, I think it's last thing to these modules, and right now we're just kind of styling them a little bit to make them look nice. I'm going to add a border. Let's go ahead and do 2 pixels and give it a similar color but darker as my background. There you go. All right, so that takes care of my first row of blurbs here. So I'm going to save that out, and I'm going to look at my questions here, see if I have any. Looking good. Let's see, Samar, when will you introduce a new feature? Hopefully very soon, actually. So be looking forward to that. Let's see. All right, looking like there's not many questions. Let's continue on. Again, if you're just joining us, I want to welcome you to this week's Divi Use Case live stream, where each week we show you how to add new design and functionality to your Divi websites. And today we're exploring how to design floating modules that float and collide in 3D space. And for more information, you can check the video description for a link to the blog post that goes along with this tutorial. And of course, if you don't have Divi yet, check out the link to our product page to learn more. All right, let's get back to it. We got our first row. We've added the rotation or transform element to rotate our row. And because our perspective is on our section, it now has that nice 3D effect. Let's go ahead and duplicate our row to create our second one. All right, and of course they are both being rotated in the same direction. Of course, I want to change that so that it will eventually collide with this one. So to do that, I'm going to open up my settings for my second row that I just duplicated there. I'm going to change my rotation from a positive 45 degrees, and I'm just going to add a negative to it. And that'll just create the opposite rotation there. All right, so as you can see, there's some overflow there to my section because we've rotated it and it's increased the size on the front of each of those rows. So I can add some spacing to my section here to, give it some more room to breathe there. So I'm just going to increase my section padding. I'm actually let's just do 10% on the top and bottom. All right. Now we got some room. Next, we're going to be using the transform options for each one of these individually. This is where you can get really creative. You can move them around however you like, shrink the size, increase the size of each one. You can even rotate them if you want. Just to get this going here, all I'm going to do is hover over my first one, and I'm just going to, for the sake of this tutorial here, I'm just going to number them from left to right, starting with 1. So this would be my first module. Second, third, fourth, fifth, and then coming down here, this will be my 6th module, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there's 10 total that we're going to be quickly changing some transform options to show you how this works. All right, so I'm going to open up my first blurb there, go down to my transform options, And the only thing I'm going to do here is scale it down just a bit. It's probably a little too big, so I'm just going to scale it down to 90%. And that's my transform scale property there. Just 90% on the X and Y axis there. And then let's save that out and go to my second blurb. Same thing, go to my transform options. I'm going to shrink this down to 80, transform scale of 80%. And then I'm going to actually rotate it on the let's see, I'm not rotate, sorry. Translate, which means move it, essentially. I'm going to move it along the y-axis here I'm going to unclick this lock because I only want to add it to one of my axis here. And then I'm going to add it a negative 10%, which is going to move it up slightly. And I'm using a percentage value instead of a pixel, just so that it's, responds nicely on browsers and things like that. Okay, that's my second one. I'm going to save it. Go to my third blurb. I'm going to go to my transform options. Let's go to 80%. And then let's add let me unlock it first. Add a negative 20%. All right, as you can see, that moved it up a bit, so it's looking good. All right, next one. Is my fourth module here. Go to my transform options, and let's make it 85%. And let's move it, let's see, negative 30%. Scale it. There we go. All right, I think I messed up on this one, so I'm going to go back to my third blurb here. Let me check something really quickly. And there we go. It should be a positive, not a negative 20, because I wanted to move it down. All right, there we go. And then for my last one, on this row, I'm going to change my transform scale to 60%. This is kind of the one far in the distance. You can't even read it, but it does add a nice design element. So I'm just going to leave it. You can always hide it on mobile if you like. All right, so it takes care of my first row. And so my second row, I'm just going to continue that same process. Try to speed it up for you because I think you got the idea by now. I'm going to go to my transform option, and let's decrease this one to 60. All right. Y-axis, negative 40%, and the x-axis, let's do negative 20%. Save it out. Go to my seventh blurb here. Go to my transform options. Let's do 90% scale. And let's move it along the y-axis 20 degrees. 20%, sorry. All right, so that moved it down a bit. Looking good. Let's go ahead and update number 8, transform options. Let's make it 70%. And a negative 20% to move it up a bit. All right, looking good. Let's do our ninth one. Let's make this one 80%. Transform option, sorry, 80%. And then a negative 20%. And I want actually I want this was number 8 to collide with the one on top. So I'm actually going to change my transform option to a negative 50%. That'll move it up. Now you can see that kind of cool 3D effect where it's colliding with one another. And because you have the transparency there, kind of looks like they're, you know, running into one another. And the last one, let's just go to my transform options for number 10 blurb there. Let's change it to 70% scale, and let's move it upward with a negative 60%. All right. Let's go ahead and save it out, and let's check what it looks like. There you go. That's pretty much our final design. We have one last step, is basically to add a background image. But let's go ahead and inspect it. I'm actually going to use some dev tools to show how it responds. You can see it gets, there it goes. It breaks to my tablet display and continues to shrink down. As you can see, once we get to mobile though, like really small mobile, the ones on the end start to hide from one another, or to go outside the width of your section there. And you know, you can fix that. You might want to just hide one of your blurbs, since 5 is kind of a lot, and that should fix your problem. Or you can, you know, really get custom. You can really customize your transform options to shrink them even more on phone as well. So you have some options there, but initially it is a responsive design. Let's go ahead and exit out there, and let's go back and add our background image like this one. So to do that, I'm going to go to my section here, go to my background image, and there it is. It's a background image taken from the same video game landing page layout that we imported to the page. So you should have access to it. Let's see if we have any questions. I kind of blew through that fairly quickly. Let's see. John J. Is there a way to add a glow to the border using CSS? Yes, that would take place using a box shadow. So you would, you know, add the box shadow to the blurb module, and you can, you know, make it using the similar colors there and transparency. You can create that glow effect. But good question. All right. So let's see, is there a way to have each individual blurb module pop back to default perspective instead of the entire row? I'm assuming you are referring to when you say pop back, as a hover effect. Let's see, maybe pop back to default perspective. I'm assuming you may be referring to a hover effect. If not, if you're wanting to, you know, this design works well when you add the perspective to the section and then the transform rotate to the entire row. That will make sure everything kind of looks consistent. The blurbs will continually kind of go farther away in Z-spaced, you know, together. But another option would be adding perspective to the column of your row, and then rotating each one of them individually along their own, giving a different perspective, I guess, to each one of your columns. And then that'll kind of change the way you can target the rotation of each module individually. I hope that makes sense. But just to give you an example here, because this is a good question. If I take, let's say I take perspective out of the section, of course, nothing is happening now. But let's say I wanted to add it to my each one of my columns. I could do that. Or excuse me, since I'm using display flex, it's just one column, but I could add it to my column here, add perspective there, save it, and then go to my module, and then go to my transform option, and then I can rotate it. And then you can see how the perspective is added to this, just this one element. I hope that makes sense. All right, let me take that out. All right, I added my perspective back. There we go. But of course, if you wanted to add a hover option, you can. Like for example, I'm gonna take this top row. Let's say on hover, I'm gonna do a hover option. I can change my degree of rotation back to 0. And that way, if you wanted to give your users a better view of your modules on hover, you can just add that hover effect and it rotates the entire row. All right, hope that answered your question. It was actually a good one to kind of teach you a little bit of how perspective works with these transform options. All right. Okay. Yeah, there's concerns on mobile, of course, for rollover effects or hover effects. It's always an option to just kind of disable those on mobile by returning them back to their original states if you don't like that. So yeah, good point there. All right, let me double check, make sure we don't have any more questions. Can the transition be made smoother? I'm assuming you're referring to the hover effect. Yes, so it's kind of the transition on the hover effect. You always have to be careful if you're shrinking elements on hover. So you might need to play around with the, for example, giving your row a larger scale on hover just to make sure you don't have that jumping on the side like that. But yeah, it was a good question. All right. Make sure, I think that's it, guys. If there's any more questions, remember that you can always look at the blog posts, submit any questions there. Of course, this video will be added to that blog post later and will be available on our YouTube channel and within Facebook as well. So if you want to jump back and look at this video later, you can do that. All right. Oh, all right. That's all I got for you guys this week. Thanks for tuning in. Please be sure to subscribe to our blog newsletter, our YouTube channel, and like us on Facebook. That way you don't miss out on any future freebies or live streams we'll be throwing your way. And our next live stream is actually coming up on Friday. It's the weekly WP Roundup. So check that out. It's this Friday at 3 p.m. And we'll be back here next Tuesday for another Divi use case live stream. And before we go, if you do want to share your knowledge, skills, and expertise on the Elegant Themes blog, feel free to check out the video description. I've included a link in there for more information on how you can contribute your own unique content. All right, thanks again, and I look forward to seeing you guys soon.